And it's just like one of those things where it's just like, okay, I'll fill in because my parents, are first generation apostolic, and so whenever I was born, they were just getting in the church, and so I've come from that walk of life, so I'm not like fifth or 10th or 20th generation apostolic where it's just like it's in my blood, you know. And so I had a very different way of growing up, and different things like that. Um, and so that was kind of like where I started. And when I started to learn how to play bass was when I was about 12 years old. And the reason why I started was because it's just like just having a rehearsal at church, and my music pastor, because I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. Um, my music pastor was like sitting on the platform talking to somebody, and they're just like, oh man, we need some more bass players at our church. Like our bass players are moving away, we don't have anybody. And I was just like, I played a little guitar, I played little drums. I was like, what's the bass? It's just a couple of notes, whatever. And so I was just like, I could figure this out, let's do it. And so I asked my pastor, because we had a random baptistry closet that had like 5 basses in it, and I was like, what? And so I asked my pastor, I was like, hey, could I take one of these basses home and see if I could, learn something, be able to help out in service? He was like, yeah. He's like, you know what? In 6 months to a year, you could be playing your first service. And I was like, I thought this was gonna be next week. Like, and that was like, oh, okay. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it was at first. But I did like hunker down, and did my first service in 2 months. And so I was just like, I'm super driven in that way, a little stubborn. But that was the reason. That was when I played my first service, and then from then on, that was kind of when God kind of put this calling of music in my life. And I didn't know that music was going to be that ever until like that moment. And still, then I wasn't even. It wasn't like a for sure direction. You're going this way. It's just like, Lord, I don't know where this is going to lead. You know. But the reason why I say all that, as far as my story, is that being on the music team is not always just a thing where it's just like, you're just trying to, because I think sometimes we're just trying to help out and use our talent, that God gave us, which is great. But sometimes that can actually be the thing, the catalyst that shows you what your purpose is. It shows you. It may not be a music thing. It may actually lead you to another ministry that really leads you, that shows you your thing. So some people, especially the people I've led over in the past, is like they always think, "Oh, I'm just trying to make you to be a professional musician." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm just trying to help you be faithful. And once you become faithful in this ministry and start pushing yourself and be committed in this ministry, it could actually lead you to the right ministry, even if it's not music." You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes people get afraid of that. Um, Not to get you preachy right here, but but that's kind of how I started. Fast forward to today, I I've been doing music professionally since I was 18 years old. Moved to Nashville around like 19, 18 or 19 years old. I left the house when I was 17 years old, so I've been on my own for a little a little while. I'm 30 now, but since then I've had great opportunities. I'm not good at talking about myself, so you probably noticed that. But I've had some really great opportunities to play at some really big stages. Some artists I've worked with is like CeCe Winans, Marvin Winans, Carrie Underwood, the Gaither Vocal Band. Um, so I've gotten a lot of opportunities, and probably a lot of the apostolic music you've heard. I've probably had some kind of hand in most of it. We were actually listening to some tracks y'all were doing at church. I was like, why does this sound familiar? I was like, oh, we did this live recording. So it was like some things like that. And a lot of people don't know this, but I've served as music pastor for years at different churches, like as paid staff, full-time staff, at a few different churches over the years. And so, because sometimes people, these like, oh, well, he's just that YouTube guy. He just does YouTube stuff. But like, honestly, in the behind the scenes, I've been a music pastor for quite a few years. I've done years of clinics and years of things like this, and so it's. I was telling Brian, there's some churches. I was really surprised already with y'all's team and just y'all's church, y'all's hospitality. There's churches I've been to that are quadruple the size of y'all's church that have nowhere near the hospitality of y'all. So it really is a blessing. Um, but yeah, so this to give you a little background about me. I do know a little bit about a lot of things, and I also produce. I'm a producer as well, music producer as well. So, anyways, enough about me. It's not about me. Just so you know who's teaching and talking to you today, that's what show you guys to know about. So, does anybody know what you think your role as a member of the worship team is? Like, what do you think our role is as a, band member or worship team member? What do you think it is like when you get on this platform and you get up here? What do you think is a part? It doesn't have to be all the aspects, but just one of an aspect you think is important or part of being on the platform and being on the music team. Yep, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's definitely a huge one. Anybody else? Hmm. Yeah, ushering in. Yep, those are correct. Those are both correct. Yeah. Mm, that's good. I like that one. That's really good. All right. Anybody else? And by the way, I'm gonna be like this. I'm not gonna just talk and y'all could just like I'm gonna let y'all gonna be in this with me. I know how it is this early. Anybody else? Yeah, yeah. I think y'all actually hit on some really, really strong ones. Like I think when we, especially in the apostolic move, we think about atmosphere, creating an atmosphere of worship, creating, a place where people could feel freedom, essentially, which is always the goal. And then I like what's your name again? I'm sorry, Sister Jessica. What she said. We're leading, and that's a big portion of like with the singers and with the whole team that I want to cover today is being worship leaders because I think the whole adage of worship leader, especially growing up for me, has always been whoever has the mic is the worship leader. You know, oh, they got the mic, they're the singer, they're doing the solo, that's the worship leader. But really, it's everybody on the team is a worship leader because there's moments I've done this for so many years now, and I've seen like a lot of different. I'm not going. Well, y'all don't know these people, but I'm not going to call anybody out or name any names. But I've seen a lot of solo people who are not worship leaders, but they're soloists, and there's a difference, you know. And that's not just people who have a mic, but it's also people who have an instrument as well. And so it could be you could be up there and just be focused on what you're doing. I talked about this with the band yesterday. You could be so focused on what you're doing that you're not actually doing the purpose of what the whole team is supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying? You could be up there so focused on your instrument, so focused on your part singing that you're like not even worshiping. You're not even like actually creating the atmosphere because that's like those two things that y'all talked about, creating the atmosphere and leading. They work hand in hand because to create you're leading just like when your pastor gets up here a lot of times I haven't really heard your pastor speak but I can just kind of guess that he's probably really evangelistic. I'm guessing. Yeah, kind of. Oh, maybe I'm off. A lot of pastors that I know are just super evangelistic and like really like they're like really energy, a lot of energy when they're speaking. And no, is he the opposite? He's passionate. Okay, passionate. That's good. Okay. Like I said, I don't know anybody here. No, but honestly, that's the reason why like that when they get a lot of like if you have an evangelist come, they're just so like energized and just like yelling from the first verse, and you're just like okay, yeah, but you're not. But when you're listening, you're not listening at that same energy. You're not like yes, yes. You're just kind of sitting there like you are right now, and you're just like oh wow, but you're trying to get sometimes for me because I've been on a lot of services like that. I'm just like, okay, what's the point? Where are you getting to? Like not trying to be. I'm not trying to be carnal or anything, but I think when sometimes like when you've been in a lot of service, all of our seasoned people, you're just like, okay, all right, I know the hype. Yeah, Jesus is one. All right, but the thing is that even with that energy, you're not giving him back what he's giving. Okay, you're not giving him 100% back what he's giving, and that's the thing with being on the platform, is that whatever you're giving, they're not going to give 100% of what you're giving. So you have to give more than what you think. You know what I'm saying? And so whenever somebody's speaking, like until you get to the impactful part of the message, until you get to the very end, it's like, oh wow, wow, I need to go to the altar. I need to pray about this. You know, because now it's set in, but it's that energy that you're not matching that energy. You're always coming short of that. So if we have low energy, low leadership when it comes to worship up here, then everybody out in the congregation is going to be doing less than that. So that's the reason why it's important. Even if we're on an instrument, if we're singing, if we're, doing sound, sound guys, they kind of could get a, bad rap, but I know a lot of sound guys, like even Bo, I see him, he's been in my church for 3 years, but he's back there, he lifts his hands, he's worshiping, even while he's doing sound. And so that's the thing, is that even he's not on the platform, but even with that, that's the reason why the platform is so important, is because we're leading and we have to give, and we have to think like, okay, they're not going to give. If I'm my friend Draylon, he was talking about his percentages weren't right because my math. I was like, your math ain't mathing. But he was saying, if you want people to give 100%, then you have to give 200%. And I was like, I get it, And so that's the same thing. It's like people only give you 50% or half. If you think about it like that, that means it's like, okay, when you're up here, you're really connecting. Does that make sense? Okay. As you'll probably know, or probably see for me, I'm a big teacher. Like I like interaction and things like that. So I'm going to be asking you guys questions more so. So another thing about being on the platform, and this is the reason why we're talking about this with everybody together, is because this is something we all need to hear, But when you're on the platform, I noticed this. I'm sure you guys know NAYC, like North American Youth Congress. So I've gotten the privilege to play at NAYC for a few years, and the one thing I noticed the first year I ever played was as soon as I got up there, I felt a magnifying glass on me. Okay, like a magnifying glass, not in a negative way, but I realized everybody, like when I got on that platform, it was like, it wasn't a thing of like, because if you don't know anything about NYC, it's like, in a stadium or whatever. And I think the first time I played was the first time it was in a stadium. So it was like a really big deal. I was like, oh man, Colt Stadium, whatever. And then I remember I was on the platform, and it was, I was sitting there and we were playing one of the songs, and I started looking just at the team. Everybody was worshipful, and that team was just, I felt like that team was just so anointed that year. It was like back in 2017. And that was when I think David Jennings was on the team, Bethany Easter, a few of those others. But I remember just looking at everybody on the team, and everybody was worshiping. Everybody was just like truly there. And something I noticed is that it was almost like a magnifying glass when we got on that platform of your spiritual life. And so, because nobody came up there and never been on a platform before. Nobody came up there and never been in ministry before. Nobody came up there and never been in this place, in a local church before and been in ministry. And so I remember even like I was telling them about David Jennings. That was the first time I met David Jennings, was at that NYC. David Jennings, how many of y'all know who David Jennings is? Yeah. Okay, so David is insanely talented, okay? He was telling me like I was telling them, he told me, he's like, man, I've already started getting events for 2027. Like, that's how far out he's getting booked out right now. Like, he's going all around the world. Like, they're having him everywhere. And so, but a lot of people don't know this about David. And this is why I love David so much. When he goes home to his local church, do you know what he's doing in ministry? Not leading worship. Isn't that crazy? Like, he's just like, to me, he's like the best worship leader. You know what I'm saying? But what he's doing sound. He's playing the piano. He's playing drums. He's helping with media. Like he's doing whatever the church needs of him. And what's crazy is that when he comes home, nobody thinks of him as like, oh, David Jennings, the worship leader, is like, oh, that's just Brother David, you know. And but what that showed me is that it's not about the platform is not what it's about. It's about what you're doing here. It's about your spiritual walk and how it's developed here. Okay, so when you get on the platform, it reveals that. What's your spiritual walk here? And especially in our local church, our spiritual walk is consistent with our worship and what we do on the platform. Because I always say this about with all my worship leaders at church, if you get on the platform, there's a lot of people who are soloists, like I said before. A lot of people who are soloists. They can sing the right part. They can kill it. Man, they can smash, right? But when they get up here and they can't even think of a scripture that they can reference, that tells me, okay, we need to work on your how's your Bible life? How's your relationship with God? Because you look at David, somebody like David. I know I keep using David as an example, but he's a great worship leader. But when he gets up there, I remember I asked him before he did Breakthrough. Yeah, no, the song Breakthrough. Breakthrough. Yeah. So he did Breakthrough. I asked him, I was like, because that was the one song he was leading at NAYC, and I was like, so what are you going to say? He's like, I'm just going to do what I've always done. I'm just going to listen to what God wants me to say. And he got up there, and I remember he got up there. He didn't even know what he was going to say until he just felt prompted. But that prompting didn't happen until he developed a relationship. Because I couldn't, if you don't have a prompting, getting up in front of 40,000 people, my goodness, like the nerves of that, But it's all about that relationship that was developed here, in the local church. And so as we go through and as we, develop ourselves as ministers here, we have to look at ourselves as leaders. We can't look at ourselves as just, I'm just an alto. I'm just a tenor. I'm just a faithful guitar player. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, you are that, but you are a leader. You're leading in this. And just like your pastor, you would expect your pastor, the expectation of your pastor to know the word is really high, right? And so that's the thing with leaders. You're supposed to know more, as a leader, because there's people who are following you. You know what I'm saying? And so that's always the goal of what we're doing. We're trying to strive to be leaders, but we're also trying to strive to be excellent. And honestly, the last part of this bullet point for me is trying to have a good presentation and connect people to God. Okay, that's another huge goal of us. I was telling the band yesterday that a lot of us musicians, especially, Brian, I was specifically telling Brian and Danny, I was telling that with the professional world, because I'm like I said, I play with a lot of professional musicians and things. It's a whole nother ballpark when it comes to listening and different things like that, which we're going to go over that a little bit later. But it's the little things are everything. It's like just so like it's crazy how just a little thing, but it's not about us being perfect, but it's about separating connection from people with God. Okay, so like when you're playing on the platform, you make a mistake. It's not about like, oh, I'm not perfect. Oh, I didn't get it perfectly right. I didn't hit that note. That note was a little sharp. It was a little flat. It's not about being perfect for your own standard, but it's about, is that going to detract people from connecting to God? That's the way we have to look at our mistakes. And I know that can seem heavy, but it should feel a little bit heavy. You know what I'm saying? It should push you. But that's the way we should look at it because when you look at it, it's just like, I'm not perfect. That's self. It's not looking at like the purpose of what we're doing here. So when you think about it as a connection to God, when I get on the platform, remember I was telling them sometimes I have like moments with my team. Like I'm not a person that gets mad or frustrated very easily. I'm pretty good with conflict, but when I get frustrated, is the only times I get frustrated is when we're in a service and something just like better like happens. And I remember one time a worship leader, They gave a wrong sign, and like I was telling them in the talk back Mike what the next part was. Literally telling them, hey, I was like 20 seconds ahead of it. Like, hey, this is the next part. Hey, this is the next part. And then they just give the wrong sign, and it got us off of our track. It made a little bit of a moment in service. I literally just looked at them, and I was like, and that was like, and they knew. They're just like, oh no, I messed up. But that's the time. I was telling Brian, I reserve my those moments for things like that versus like every day. Because some people expect you to just be like a drill sergeant. It's like, you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. You get out of here. Whatever. You're fired. Whatever. Like, I don't feel like that's the best way to lead, but it's reserving those times for that because that's the purpose of what we're doing. Because what I'm trying to show is like the importance of what we're doing is that connection. And if you do something to detract from that connection, I don't care if you make a mistake, but if it's a mistake that's small enough to be just like, oh, it's a little fumble, okay, we can get past that. Nobody's probably even noticed that. But if it's something where it's like, oh man, the drummer had to stop the song, okay, we just lost the connection with everybody. You know what I'm saying? And you're smiling like that's happened before. Hey, it's happened to everybody. It's definitely happened to everybody, especially when we were learning. Every church that I've ever taught tracks to, it's just one of those things. Like I told Brian, I was telling him at the coffee shop, Starbucks earlier. I was like, I was really impressed with his communication of how the team is and everything because it's probably the most accurate representation I've ever had at a church. Because most people look at their teams very like, and he didn't talk bad about you guys or anything. No, but he was like very accurate with where you guys were at, and because most people are just like, oh yeah, my church, yeah, we're ready to do tracks, we're ready to do all this stuff, and I get in there and they can't even get through a song, like they don't even know how to start and end a song, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if y'all ready for tracks, but when I came in here yesterday, we started rehearsing. I was like, yeah, they're ready for tracks. They're ready for like it's actually you're actually at a good point. Just so y'all know that I was like really pleasantly surprised. I was telling my wife last night. I was like, oh wow, but most people are not very accurate. That they were just like, oh yeah, we're better than what we actually are. It's so no, but that's just the purpose of what we're doing on the platform. That's why we have to know all these things. Um, how many of you guys? I asked this question to the band yesterday. Band, you could still answer this question too. But how many of you guys practice outside of Sunday? Yeah. Okay. So, how many of you guys practice stuff that's not at church on Sunday? So, yeah. So, yeah. So, like, how many? So, I was telling the band, okay. So, there's one thing of practicing the songs for Sunday, but there's another thing where you're practicing the things that are just like, so I'm learning this skill, I'm learning this thing, this technique. How many of y'all do that? Any of y'all? On occasion, sometimes. How many? All right, let me break it down even more for my singers. How how many of y'all do warm ups or anything throughout the week? Wow. Okay, we got two. We got a couple, three. So that's good. Well, and honestly, I don't usually most times unless you're really trying to be a singer and like travel and stuff. I don't expect you know you guys to be like, what was it? Do re mi fa sol la ti? Like do all that every day. But the thing is that with every team, with every worship team, there always has to be a want for growth. How many of y'all want to grow, want to get better? I mean, honestly, y'all are here in the morning on a Saturday, okay? That showed me some dedication right there. How many of y'all have kids? Please. See, wow, that's dedication. That's dedication. See, when I was single, like, I didn't realize we don't even have kids yet, but I have such an appreciation for parents, such an appreciation. Like, it's so I was like, I think about like with all of my friends that have like kids and stuff. They're like, for the first 5 years, it's just like they just travel with like they move because they have all this stuff with them, all these bags and all these things. I'm like, man, that's crazy. Now, me and my wife we want to be parents. We're not like, oh, anti that, but we just have a deep appreciation. So thank y'all for being here. I know, I know it's probably a lot, but the thing is, we want to be able to grow. We want to have the whole like spirit on the team is growth. Okay, growth takes awareness that we need to grow, and also it takes direction and focus of what we need to focus on. Okay, so today what I'm going to be trying to do with that is we're going to. I think y'all all are aware that you need to grow. Yeah, do y'all agree? Yeah, need to grow. Okay, I figure that's. I mean, that's why you're here. But I want to make sure to give you the direction of where you need to grow. Okay, because I always tell this. I was teaching in Pittsburgh actually on Sunday, and it was I was telling them right now with social. I was talking to a bunch of like musicians, but I was telling them on social media right now and just like YouTube and stuff. It's like there's so many resources out there to grow, but the issue right now is like what to do, what to use, what videos do I watch, what thing do I do? There's like 5,000, 50,000 videos and warm ups. Which one should I use? You know, and that's been like the hard thing, and I call that like the focus. That's like the focus barrier because you can't focus on anything because you're so overwhelmed by all the different resources. Because back in the day, I mean, it was like nothing. Like when I started learning how to play bass, YouTube wasn't a thing, and so I was like reading a book, listening to a song, like listening to a cassette tape. You know, like for the younger ones, they're like, "What is that?" um, and things like that. And so that's like when it comes to this, that's what I want to try to give you today is some of those things. Now, a lot of these probably be a little bit more, maybe not always personal. Like just some of them may be personal. Like if I'm like, hey, brother, I may single out like somebody like Danny, and just be like, hey, why don't you work on this chop or work on this thing or work on this, technique? I may do that privately, but I'm not going to do that in front of everybody. Just because I don't want people to feel like, oh gosh, you called me out. But I did that a little bit with the band yesterday, but it wasn't. I don't think y'all didn't. I wasn't too bad, was I? Okay. It was just like, no. But as long as we are all in that state of wanting to grow, we're going to be able to grow. How many of y'all watch your live stream? Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Some people are just like, yeah, I guess. But the thing is I for so many people, I was so afraid to watch my live stream early on. Like when live stream became a thing, I didn't realize when I was a kid how bad it was. Um, it was bad. It was like beginning stages of live stream. Like we've got the camcorders on like the dad cams. Like that's how we did live stream back then. But but the thing is, what I realized the more I started getting leadership in music, it's like especially in ministry, um, that is your first line of sight for any guest in your church. Anytime me and my wife go to a city and we want to visit a church, where's the first place we go? Social media and the live stream. Those two, those two places. Usually, social media tells us, "Oh, this is the name of the church," and then we go to the live stream. You know what I'm saying? And so, I tell my team this all the time, and I say, if you're cringing about how our live stream is, how do you think somebody who doesn't know your church is feeling right now? And so, I mean, honestly, I just heard what Bo and them have been working on. It sounded great, like from with the sound checks and things we did. I was like, oh wow, man, Bo, that sounds better than ours, huh? That's good. uh, no, but like that's how you have to look at it. It's like, okay, if it's a cringe fest, then how do we fix that? How can we make that better? You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, no church has the elevation amount of like money and equipment, like down to Elevation Church, right? Like the big, yeah. Um, so I always have to check because some people don't. I think people know these names and people are just like, what's that? And so, um, but yeah, they have a lot of money. They can do all these huge things, and a lot of times those churches don't even live stream. Those are actually pre-recorded services, and so because what they do is they dial it in like a album versus like a normal live service, and that's the reason why nobody can compare to them because it's like a produced like music video essentially. So, but that's good. I'm glad you guys are used to watching that. But just when you watch it, just pay attention to what things you can do. Because I watch you guys' a couple of services you guys live stream before I come here. Everybody always gets nervous when I do that. But because it's one of those things like even Brian being so accurate of the team, like people say that. That's the reason why I watch because people say, "Oh yeah, we're ready for tracks. We can do all this." And I watch their live stream and it's like, like they're not even singing in the mic. They're like, they don't even know what's happening. Somebody's got shorts on the platform and they got flip flops, and I'm like, oh man, we got to start from square one. Like, that's the reason why. Yeah, it's just I always have to watch. I just always have to watch. And also another way to help you with growth is being accountable to somebody. I think Brian's a perfect person to be accountable to. I always say that because he's the one person that's going to be um, looking at the growth of the team as a whole, as a leader. And so if you're, let's say you want to challenge yourself, actually, I want everybody to do this. Even if you have like a note on your phone, you can do this. I want you to challenge yourself with one goal for practicing and growth on the music team. One goal. Y'all could think about it. I want y'all to think about it by the end of today. I want you to write it down, what you think it is. And you can, because some of this you may not even know until we start getting in rehearsal. And you're like, okay, I need to work on that. But I just want one. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen with a page of goals. It starts with one. So if we have one goal, like so, if you're a singer, you're like, oh man, the only time I practice is for church. Then it's like, okay, what is one thing I could do outside of that I can practice on? Even if it's just a warm up. Like we do warm ups at my church every Sunday with the team. It helps my team to just kind of warm up and everything. But when you start challenging yourself on warm ups, it's like exercising. How many of y'all like did an exercise routine and like was consistent for like a month, okay? And then you slacked off for 2 or 3 months and you came back and that workout was like 10 times harder. Yeah, anybody? Yeah, I'm admitting it for sure. But that's the reality of the same thing with your voice. It's like when you don't consistently work it, that muscle doesn't stay strong. And so like if you let's say you go, you're off the schedule for a little while, you're on vacation, whatever. Like I remember Charity Gale. You know Charity Gale is? So Charity, great friend of mine. I remember we were on tour. She had her first baby, and we had got off tour for like I think 6 months because she, just had her baby and all this kind of stuff. She got back on the road. She hadn't sang in all those 6 months. Man, that rehearsal was rough. Like, and it wasn't that she was like bad, but she could even tell like she just hasn't sang in so long. But when we're touring, we're playing like 2 to 3 concerts a week, and so like she's like going, doing 2 hours a night and like just going. But whenever she took that break, that muscle started to deteriorate. So that's the reason why it's good to just have like a easy just warm up. Like there's a 5 minute warm up. You can literally type in vocal warm ups, and there's this 5 minute warm up that we do with our team. You just do that every day. It'll help you stay strong. Okay, just as something as simple as that. Because I know not a lot of us are trying to be like professional singers or whatever, but that's one thing that can help you just stay strong. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Is everybody okay? Am I? All right. Nobody's falling asleep on me, right? Okay. All right, so the last couple things I want to talk about. I don't want this to be like a whole big presentation for the whole day, because I have done that before when I first started doing clinics, and people were just like, "Oh man, this is awesome! Oh man, this is awesome! Oh man, this is awesome!" And they just started like, "Okay, there's like this is so much information. I can't even think about anything." So I'm trying to make that a thing. Ever since I did from years ago, I've tried to like make this more practical than just this. One thing that I talked to Brian about is we're gonna be starting to try to use tracks and loops. Well, we already kind of use loops and stuff here. We're gonna start trying to use tracks, and I know I was talking to Danny too. Tracks are super important. Sometimes you don't see the importance of them until you hear it out here. Um, and I will say, at first, when I first started out with tracks, I was pretty much in where Jesse was. I didn't know much about how it all worked. I've seen people use it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. We got to bring this back to my church. But then when you got into a setting like this, and you're just like, hey, we want to go back to that bridge. Uh, like that was me. That was me. And I was like, I don't know how to get back there. I don't know how to do that. And so with tracks and things, there's a couple of things I'm going to ask of everybody because I'm going to be working with Gio and Jesse on learning this track thing. Is just give them grace because it is. I will say I don't think with some of when I was talking to Brian, he was like, "Yeah, we want to use tracks," and he told me about a few times. I think even Danny talked about a time where it's like you got off the track, but you didn't know what happened. Different things like that. Um, some of that is learning on their part because it's a big undertaking for them, and I don't think people really understand that quite deeply until you start getting into. I was telling Brian just this morning, is like you'll start to notice things like even like the type of computer you use makes a difference because sometimes it can glitch. I had that issue so much growing up because my computer was like a brick. It wasn't like it was an old computer, and so I'm gonna be working with them. So just as y'all are learning this, as we're doing it today, and as this is starting to be incorporated in the future, just like you can express like it'd be easier if we did this, but it may take them some time to like, okay, how do we do this? How do we do that? So like one of the, just give you an example, we were doing breakout yesterday with the tracks and the count in, because that was a recording that I played on. I was like, I don't remember the counting being this short. And it was like, I was like playing it. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 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 no. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And that was like something just as simple of like, okay, we need to add some more time in and make that count in longer. Everything else was pretty much fine. But that was one of those things where it's like, how do you do that? And so he has to look it up. He has to, figure that out. But that's the reason why I say express, like when you're getting those moments, don't feel free to express it, but just give them the grace to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? So, because that's just going to help grow. Um, and y'all all use in-ears here, right? Like in-ears for your headphones. Man, I feel like my church is like the last person to do this. Like we only have 2 inner packs at our church. It's just whoever's leading worship, and one other person. And because I think Yodia do 6 singers. Yeah, so we do the same at our church. Um, it's usually the worship leader and just one of the other people. There's one of my worship leaders that's singing has a pack. Everybody else has in-ears. Um, but when it comes to, I think sometimes singers definitely do need to have that click. Do y'all actually, let me ask this. How many of y'all have all the music down in your mix? Nobody? Like, so like in your mix, like what do you turn down or turn up most? Is it usually just your voice singer wise, like for my singers? Or all of it? Hmm. Which I'm gonna let Boats talk a little bit more about that. He's gonna help out when we get there. But I was just curious because I know sometimes, especially musicians, we like to have ourselves up like at 95% and everybody else at 30. You know what I'm saying? And so I just didn't know because sometimes that could be the thing that gets you off. You know what I'm saying? And some people don't think about that. It's like your mix, what you have up. Like for me, if you ever listen to my mix, the first thing I start off with is click, track, drums. Those are my starting points. And then myself after that. Because that's kind of the basis of what I do. Danny's like, yes. Drums. But that's usually the way I like to start because those are the things that are going to keep me on, you know, because most times the drummer, if the drummer gets off, I mean, never mind. But the drummer usually, like I've been in a lot of situations playing with people where the drummer was the only one that had ears, and so I'm very used to trusting the drummer, you know, and so that's the reason why drums are always up in my mix. And now I know David Jennings is kind of like what you said, like have everything up. He's a musician, so like I don't use that as a rule of thumb where he has his mix because he has guitars up in his mix. I'm like, bro, how can you even sing over that? But it's thinking about how you're going to be able when you're on the platform, how you're going to be able to focus, how are you going to be able to stay on? Because sometimes when you have the moving of the spirit and you're in there and you're just like I've had moments where I'm like you're like crying on the verge of tears and I'm just like I'm praising. Then I realize, oh man, we're about to go to a new section and I didn't even realize, like, I didn't have enough. And it was like I just kind of passed my mind, and people were like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And it's not that you should like stop yourself, but and this is something I always say too, is the leader is the person who assumes that responsibility. I don't know if this is how you guys run the culture here, but in my church, I always tell my team, if you want to go worship, you can go worship, okay? But and I will take it. You know what I'm saying? That's always what I always assume. It's like, okay, that I'm the one that's responsible for this, not you. So like if you're like on your knees and you're just needing this moment with God, go to the altar. I'm gonna take this moment. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the way we run it at our church. And so I'm not trying to speak for you, Brian. Okay. So like if y'all just know like it is okay to have the click and all this kind of stuff in your ears, just like I said. It is also good to know when it's like, okay, this is a moment that I need to go be in the altar as well. Anyways, sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. Um, sorry, I'm getting a little preachy. I've been teaching at church a lot more. So I'm just like, everybody needs to be saved. Everybody needs to go. Okay. One thing to two, this is a small point. Always be watching in the moment. I was telling the band this. One thing that you can get focused on too much is like your part and the technical things about what you're doing. So for me, when I'm playing bass, most times on Sundays I'm playing bass. I had the talkback mic. I have the tracks here, and I'm like flowing, watching everything. Um, it's a lot to handle sometimes. So I'm like focusing on the track, focusing on playing my part, making sure the drummer is not like dozing off. And I'm just like focusing on all these different things. Sometimes it can take you away from the moment, what's happening in a service. And as a team, it shouldn't just be Brian watching that moment. Now, of course, he's always watching that moment. He's always like, okay, all right, what's happening? Are people are really engaged? Like, is there people on the altar? Do we need to stay here for a second? Do we need to, he's watching for that, but we all need to be watching for that. That moment, I got convicted on that moment a couple years ago. One of the girls on my team, her name is Bethany Easter. She is like great worship leader. And I was just not even, I was just like kind of doing my normal, oh, it's just Sunday. We're just doing our thing. I was playing. We're on the second song. We usually do two songs at the top, and then another set with two songs. So we're at the second song. Usually the first two songs are like kind of like your one and done songs. Most times you don't stay there for a long time. At least most times I play. And so we're just there. And then for some reason, she was just like, she looked at me, she was getting my attention. She was like, go back to the bridge. And I was like, back to the bridge. And I was like, okay. Went back to it on Ableton, started playing, and I started realizing there was like people just weeping in the altar, and like somebody was praying for the Holy Ghost. And I was like, oh, whoa. And now I was just looking down. I wasn't even paying attention to what was happening in the moment. And that convicted me like real hardcore. Because it's like as a worship team and as leaders, we're looking for that. Because that's a big part of the purpose of what we're doing there is to connect people. So when people have that strong connection, that's when we facilitate. It's like, okay, if there's like people down here and it's just like, man, there's somebody, a backslider that just came up to the front and you're just like, oh my gosh, they're at the altar? What? And this is like a big moment. Of course you don't want to stop the song. Like you probably need to go back to that bridge, do that, and then maybe ask your either Brother Brian or Brother Brian may ask the pastor and just be like, hey, do you want to move on? What do what? Because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to facilitate the moment, okay? And so whenever that happens, that's why we have to be looking. Because when that happened, everybody else was looking but me, and that's why I felt so convicted. I was like, oh my gosh. And so everybody else was like on the same page. Yeah, we're going back to the bridge, yeah. And I was like, oh, what's going on? But that's the reason why it's so important, because now I'm able to do my job better and anticipate before anybody even has to say anything, because then that makes it easier for Brian. Like if he's doing something, he doesn't even have to like worry, because he knows that everybody's going to be with him, even if he gives the call late. He's going to be like, oh, okay, they know where we're going. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? And the last thing I want to talk about is playing to the listener. I call this playing to the listener. Um, so we all listen to music, right? We all know we have some of our favorite songs. There's um there's this thing I've started to notice playing because to give you a concept for how much music I hear and do on a weekly basis. Um, this is probably the most ever songs I played in one day. I played 134 songs in a day before, um, which which was crazy. It was just like yeah, but weekly average is probably 30 songs a week. You know that I'm either playing on, producing on, whatever, at least 30 songs a week outside of church. And so I hear songs all the time. And that's the reason why when I'm in my car, I don't ever have music. Like it's just silence. Silence is like my best friend when I'm in the car. It's just because I hear music all the time. But with that, I started to notice this thing. When you listen to a song, you're learning a song. Okay? When anybody listens to a song, you're learning a song. So no matter if I heard the song a million times, my ear first hears it, I'm learning it. Okay? So, good example, when you're here at church, your mind's on whatever else before you get in here. You have to come in here, you got to get focused. Are you doing Lord, You're Good? I was like, you're in there. Lord, you are good in your mercy. All right. Even though you've heard that song a million times, I'm sure y'all have. I think I heard y'all do it in your live stream. So, um, but you hear that song, you've heard it a million times, but still, when you listen to it, your ear is having to your brain is like having to re-recognize or relearn. Oh, I've heard this before, but it still takes a second before it gets there. And so, when you listen to the song, you have the intro, verse, sometimes a pre-chorus, and then it's chorus, right? So my rule of thumb is like when you're playing, and I do this for a lot for musicians, but I think everybody should know this. Where you listen to a song, if you try to do any variation in that, the first time somebody hears a section of a song, they're going to think it's a part of the song. Okay, all right. Now I know my musicians. I don't know if y'all probably can stay with me on this one because usually when I tell people to do licks and things like that, it's usually on the second time you go through a song. So I say this because whenever you're singing or doing different things, and you're a worship leader and you want to do an ad lib or something that's special, you have to let people learn the song first. So let them have that first verse, let them have that intro, let them have that pre-chorus, and then let them have that first chorus. And then when you go back to that second verse, people's ears know the song. That makes sense? So they know the parts of the song. They know what the basic nature is of the song. So then if you do an ad lib, if you do a drum chop or a guitar lick or whatever, do it that second time, then it'll affect them more. It'll be more effective. Because sometimes people feel like, well, as soon as I get the mic, I just need to start running. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. And it's like, oh, okay. I don't even know what the song is. You know what I'm saying? And so, but that's the reason why you wait. You notice, like I was telling them when I worked with the Winans, they told us when we work with tracks, they call themselves the vampires. That's what people call them because they get into a vamp and they'll just keep going vamp, 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 vamp. So when they get to that vamp or whatever, they told the whole band, they're just like, hey, when we get to the vamp, we'll just flow. I was like, bet, all right, we'll do it. And so but that's the reason, because they let people learn the song, but when they get to that vamp, they know everybody's in at that point. And that's the time where they're just doing all their crazy runs and all their crazy stuff, which, by the way, I don't know if any of y'all listen to CC or Marvin Winans. Man, they just had the setup that we have, the times that we did, it was like real bad setups. Like, it was just like mic and a monitor, and they just sound flawless. I was like, I've played with a lot of people, but I remember that. I'd never forget that. I was just like, oh my gosh, you have auto-tune on right now? Like, it's crazy. But because they come from like a churchy, world, they don't need a whole lot to do good. So, but that's the same thing as what I'm talking about, playing to the listener, looking at the song as a whole. And this is something that I was telling Brian we're going to start trying to do. You're going to start trying to implement here. Because I had a meeting with Brian. I always like to meet with the worship, leader, or, music director first before everybody else, because just to see what he wants to do, things he wants to grow in. I don't want to just be like putting my own goals on you guys. Oh yeah, we want to do this. We want to do a live album. We want to do whatever. I don't like that may not be y'all speed right now. You know what I'm saying? And so I want to check with him and everything. But one of the things we're going to start, I think you guys are going to start implementing is starting to play the original songs and letting the original songs that you already do challenge you. And that's something that we're going to do today because we were going to do 2 new songs this Sunday, but I think we're only going to do 1 now, right? And the reason why is this is hopefully this doesn't call anybody out. It probably will, but it's fine. But something I noticed whenever I was in Alabama, and this man, the church culture in Alabama is just like the 1800s. Sorry, but it's like it really is. I hate to say it. Like when I left Alabama, it was just like my eyes were open to like, wow, church can be good. Like I'm sorry, I hate to say that. I'm sorry. That was bad, but it really was bad. Like it was just like tracks. There's still people. There's most of the churches in Alabama still today don't even use loops, like in the whole state. Like, and so it's just like, whoa. Like, because even like I know this area, there's not that many churches, but even the churches here that I've been to, they're using like starting to try to use loops and tracks and things. Even though there might not be that many, they may not be at like a mega, like huge, massive churches. They're still like way far further than Alabama. So, anyways, I got off that soapbox. But the one thing that we used to do whenever I was growing up is that we would introduce a new song, and my music pastor would be like, and I'll be learning the song. I was like, and I learned this part, and she'd be, oh no, we're changing that part to this. We simplified it, and I was like, oh, okay. And so, and I just learned whatever part they did, and we did that all the time for all the songs we did. And when I started to get in leadership myself, I started to notice other people do that. And I was like, huh, interesting. And what I did is when I started to get into leadership, I realized that that was hurting us. Because every person who did that, their team was here. They never grew. They stayed here. But everybody who actually didn't do that was here. They were growing. No matter what level they were at, they were growing. And the reason why that is because people don't realize, like, and I actually really learned this when I started doing like live albums and records and stuff. I was telling the guys this. It's so detailed. It's detailed whenever you're having to create all the different elements of a song and different things like that. But when you listen to Lord You're Good, everybody's like, oh, that's the easiest song out there. But is it the easiest song when you actually learn what they did on the original? That's where it challenges you. And so, like I was telling even Danny, I was like, if you just played all the original chops that the drummer played on the original song, that song is not easy anymore. You know what I'm saying? If you learn all the ad libs or learn all the tricks they did with vocals and things like that on the original, then it's like, whoa, this song that was easy is actually not as easy as we thought. You know what I'm saying? And so what we're going to start trying to do is push ourselves with even the songs that you already know and just really hone in on the actual original version of the song. Okay. And I said this to Brian, and I felt so bad because he was like, yeah, I think I'm guilty of doing that sometimes before. And I was like, oh man, I hope I didn't. I just messed up our friendship. but the thing is that it's one of those things because sometimes it doesn't take learning that big hard shout song to grow. It's just taking the songs you already know and actually playing the original. Because what happens is that we dumb songs down to our level instead of letting them elevate us up to another level. And so that's what we have to do when it comes to songs is let them elevate us instead of bringing them down to our level. Because we always bring the songs down to our level, we're never going to grow. And so even if it's just like taking Lord You're Good and learning the chops, okay? It may take a couple Sundays. You know what I'm saying? It's like learning all the little nuanced chords, you know, it is on piano, or learning all the little ad-lib, little one-timer moments that happens in the vocals. Like there's a song called Life by William McDowell. Do you know that song? He's given me life exceedingly. Life. All right, so love that song. My worship team always makes fun of me because I love this song so much. I think it's just because it has a fun bass line, and it's just like a fun song. But it has like this moment in the third verse where the singers are like they do this like he's giving me life, like, and it's like this like big rundown, and it's just one time, and most people don't do that. But I was like, hey, we're gonna do that. Now it took us well, it actually didn't take my team that too long to do it because I think they've learned from the culture that I built there, like we're gonna learn it either way. So they learned it pretty quick, but just that one moment taught them something. So like they were real. Like now when we do it, we sound like the record. We don't need the stems, vocals, or anything like that because that we actually learned it just like they did. So it's stuff like it's little like even if it's a one timer because most times our excuse is usually is like, well, they only do that one time. Nobody's going to notice that, but you do. You notice that. You know what I'm saying? And so those little things and little moments elevate us. Those little things, it's all gradual. Growth is not overnight. I was telling them, I know I keep telling them, I had a nice long conversation with Brian and Danny yesterday, but um, but one of the things we don't think about is like backsliders, people who backslide from the church. That doesn't happen overnight. We were talking about that, and I know anybody who's in ministry knows the backsliding doesn't happen overnight. It's something that's consistent. It happens like over time, and then all of a sudden it looks like it happens overnight, but it's been ruminating for about a year. You know what I'm saying? Same way it goes on the positive end with growth. It's like it could be negative on a decline, gradual decline to get going bad, and eventually whatever backsliding. But there's also the same thing with actually getting better in church, and also just like with growth in general, is that growth doesn't happen where you overnight where it's like, okay, after this weekend we're going to be doing tracks every service, we're going to be doing we're going to add all these things and do all these things every Sunday from now on. Like that's not going to happen. Most times I've had people do that after I've left before, and it's just like, man, we had a great Sunday this past Sunday, it was amazing. And then it's just like it starts here, and it's just like because it was too fast, it wasn't gradual. And so with all these different changes, all of this will be gradual. That's the reason why we're even just not even just trying to add new songs, but taking the original ones, learning and just learning all the parts, because that's a gradual pace. Because once you start to do that, then when you go to learn a new song, then that's how you're going to learn it. You're going to learn it like that, and it's actually going to push you even more. And then it helps you even choose what songs to play, because my rule of thumb always with my team is like, I'm not going to choose a song if we can't play the original. Okay, if we can't play it like the original, I'm not even going to do it. So like there's because like there's James, y'all know who James Fortune is. James Fortune, crazy music. Just if you're a musician, just you need the tracks because you're not going to be able to play it. So like, it's like that kind of music. But the thing is that with his songs, I remember there's somebody who was like, "Oh, I want to learn the song Best Praise." I was like, "Yeah, I played that song at a conference before. We didn't make it. Like, we didn't make it on that song, and we tried to simplify it. Like, no, like, and so, and even when it's a song that's like, all right, this song, I think our church would like this song, but can you play it? Is that has to start to be the mindset." And now that I'm thinking about this, now I've even thought about, and this we'll talk about this as we're going through, but confidence comes through on stage. Comes through when you sing, comes through when you play, comes through when you worship lead. If you don't have that, like when you're timid and you're singing like, what's the song? Lord, you are good and your mercy. Like it's just like, okay, I'm supposed to follow that, like, and you're expecting people to be like, and you're just like, it's like, whoa. You're not even, connecting there. But that's when it comes to singing. But when it comes to playing, it's even, or actually even just, it is singing too. Like the note that you actually hit. If you hesitate on a note, you may know the part, but if you don't get it in the right timing, that makes everybody's part sound off. Like, and this is the reason why people hate watching the live stream, because that is the most revealing thing. Because I remember I had our music team start watching a live stream. The singers, I remember we literally sat here like this on a Saturday. because we do quarterly clinics in my church with the team, and I pulled up a TV screen, and we sat right here. We watched the live stream. But it was funny. I was telling both of you guys this. Um, when you watch this, when you watch it, you don't actually need somebody to come in and tell you what to do. You know, you know. Like, it's like you watch that, and it's just like, mm. I was like, I didn't get much sleep that night, huh? Like, it's like I'm a little, pitchy. Like, I don't know if my bass was in tune. Like, it's like you know when you watch it, you're just like, okay, I know where I need to improve. I don't have to. Nobody has to come in here and just be like, all right, this is where you need to improve. You just like, yeah, that's where I'm at. but that was, but because of that, a lot of those things came like learning confidence. That was a big thing because people are just like, man, I have the right part. But then what's wrong? Why is it not sounding good? It's confidence. How confident are we? Something that uh, also working on with Brian is he was telling me like when he sends out the songs, things like that. He's got some goals for that. Like he's going to try to send out songs that further out and different things like that because it's just um, it helps you to be able to be more confident because I think sometimes when you don't have time to practice, warm up for the song, things like that, it can play into that. I'm not trying to give you guys excuses. Don't take this as an excuse to be like, well, Brian, I can't get better because you send the songs like just a few days before. No, 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 no. Don't take that like that. But the thing is that there is if you do want to get better, if you do want to like get these parts, that having them a little ahead of time helps. Like right now, which my church a little different. We I have like a pretty scheduled out thing. We go like a month out. We have like all of our songs picked for all the services for a month, like out. So I'll tell them next week. Um, we'll have all of our songs sent out from November. All the song sets, who's scheduled for what parts, who's leading, all of that's out at the beginning. Which that is, like I said, that takes time. We didn't get there overnight. Let's just say that it took from like, okay, we're gonna have this. We're gonna try to go a week out. All right, then we're going to try to go 2 weeks out. Then we're going to try to go 3 weeks out. So give grace to Brother Brian because I know what it's like to have like a job and just volunteer at a church. It's a lot. I can imagine what that's like with kids. That's I know that's like a whole nother level. But that's something we're gonna try to start. Y'all are gonna try to start doing. I'm saying we like I'm about to be here with you. No, I don't know if I like potatoes enough, but oh yeah, yeah, I do have. Oh yeah, good. um, but anyways, we're gonna go over that more so when we get to it. But does anybody like with these kind of things? I know sometimes people have like questions. That you're just like, oh, I always want to just ask this question about this. I want some clarity on this. Is there any questions that anybody has about anything with the music team, ministry, um, anything? Just yeah. Mhm, mhm, mm, yeah. No, that's a big thing. Actually, that's something that my church is really known for because we are very in the moving of the spirit. Like we don't like to be pigeonholed into anything either. But there is a balance with it. Okay, I don't know if I even said this to anybody, but um, finding the sections that you feel like. So I was telling Brian this. Find the sections that your church connects to, or it's a section that she's like, oh man, this is a really impactful moment that I don't feel like we don't stay in long enough. That's something. That's something that you have to figure out after you do the original. So, like, let's say you do, Lord, you are good on the track, it goes to the bridge, and the bridge felt like it was way too fast. Okay, you was like, oh man, we need to go back into the bridge. We need to do that. It's like, okay, you do it one Sunday original, and then when you start to feel those moments of like, okay, I want to go back to this section, then you start to create an arrangement of what you want. Okay, so it's like, okay, all right, the track says we're going to go to the verse one time, chorus one time, verse two one time. chorus 2 times, and then the bridge 1 time, and then chorus 1 time. But that bridge, man, that's only one bridge. Our church really likes that bridge. Why don't we do that 3 times or 2 times? 3 times sounds like what? But 2 times, you know what I'm saying? Then what you're doing is finding the arrangement for your church. Okay, that's and because of what people tend to do is just repeat that verse a million times until people get up and start moving. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what my church was back in Alabama. It was like we just be like singing, verse 1. It's like, oh yeah. And chorus, verse 1. Oh, cool. Verse 1 again. Okay. Verse 1 again. You know, it's like okay, are we ever gonna get anywhere in the song? but but that's the thing is like finding those moments because I don't think always it's choosing multiple moments. Just like with the Winans, they knew what moment to choose. They knew what moment going into it. There's like okay, this is gonna be this is the spot. This is the spot where we're gonna vamp. We're just gonna flow. We're gonna flow right here. I always tell my team with every track there's a spot where we choose our spot that we're gonna be flowing because or even like because sometimes for I'll say 95% of the time intro first verse first chorus and even like what's that second verse and chorus second chorus are not going to be ones you want to do a million times because it's when you listen to a song how many times when you're listening to a song in the car do you go back to the first verse you skip back to the first verse again or skip back to the second verse even when you listen to a worship song how many times do you do that in the car I don't ever do that in the car because when you're listening to it as a body of work because it's leading you on a path and so but sometimes usually when that's the reason why the bridge is always that impactful moment because that's usually where everything's summed up right there. And that's the reason why I always reference the bridge or the vamp because that's when things are summed up. That's where it's like, what a beautiful name it is. You like that song. You know what a beautiful name, right? What a beautiful name when you get to death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. Silence at the yeah. I can't remember the lyrics, but like when we get to that part, that's what we're repeating because that's where it all comes summed up. It's like, why is this a beautiful name? Why is it all these things? Because that moment right there. And so that's what you have to start to determine. It's like, what is that moment in whatever song it is? Because it sometimes it can be the bridge. Sometimes it could be the vamp. Sometimes it could be the chorus. But I will say most times it's not the verse. But I'm not gonna like say don't ever do the verse. But that's what you start to define that arrangement for your church. Like, okay, our church likes this. Because sometimes my church likes random sections. And I'm like, all right, let's go back. But it was defined after we did the original, felt the constraints, and then we're just like, this is where we need to go. But it's finding those singular moments. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers your question with that. I know it's with working with the track, it's gonna be tension all over because you're not used to being confined to something, having a boundary like that of like, oh well, we've got to follow this sequence. Which is another thing we're going to be working on, is having a sequence. That's a big thing that Tracks helps people on, is because when you don't have a sequence, anything goes. You know what I'm saying? But when you do have a sequence, you have a confines to grow from. You know what I'm saying? Because if lyrics were just all over the place, there's no consistency. You know, if you're writing a song or something like that. But when you have those confines of like, okay, this is how many choruses we do, then it's repeatable. Does that make sense? Because not to say we're like, you know, setting a big performance or where we're going to repeat, you know, bringing the spirit down or whatever. No. But it's finding what's the best flow for your church. I remember we Power in the Name, Draylen. Yeah, have you ever done that here at the church before? No. So that song I remember Bethany. She was like, "Wow, I feel like we need to do like one more chorus at the end." Well, actually, she's like, "We just need to repeat the chorus." And I remember she's like, I think we added 4 choruses, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, Bethany, this is not going to work." And so we did 4 choruses, and we did it once. We did it, and it was like we barely worked one time. We were just like, "Man, it just felt long." And so what we did is the next time we took it down to 3, and it was like, "Oh, that feels a little better. It still feels a little long." And then we took it down to 2, and that was our sweet spot. It's like just one chorus. We just need to add one chorus there. And that's what the sweet spot was. But if we didn't have those constraints, we wouldn't know. that that's what the issue was. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and also whenever you're adding new people to the team, they don't have any consistency if you don't have tracks too. Sometimes like, what section do I need to be practicing? How does the church normally do this? Because there's this church in Alabama I was working with. It was that it was no names, but there was the pastor was just adamant. He said, "Oh man, we need to do tracks, do all these things," and they were the ones that couldn't, play through a song, and they didn't like there. This is the way that they treated things was like, okay, if you're out, like there wasn't like alto, soprano, tenor. It was like I just go to whatever part I hear. That was the level, and I was like, whoa. So like, and then outside of that too, they didn't have any structure of chorus. Nobody was giving signs of like chorus and things like that. And so there was no that it was like one of those moments where it's like completely just open ended, just what is going on. And so, but it shows you how structure, and I've been, this is something I'm kind of like my mantra of the weekend. It's like how structure, when you can use it to work for you and not against you. You know what I'm saying? So, sorry, big tangent. Any other questions? Yeah. 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 Totally. Totally. Um, the thing is that when you deviate from the schedule, you just want to be the exception, not the rule. So like, because some people feel like if you have a schedule, then that's automatically quenching the spirit. Some people feel that way. It's like, oh, the fact that you have a set list, oh man, you're quenching the spirit. Like, well, so what are we gonna do? You know what I'm saying? But the big thing is that, especially in my church, we're really dynamic with this. Is that there's actually past few Sundays we had some guest speakers in and stuff, and it was just like it just felt good to cut a song and just go straight to preaching. And sometimes we just got to one song and then we just vamped to other songs that wasn't a part of the plan, things like that. And we didn't even go to the other song we had planned because we were following what was happening in the moment. And so that's the reason why you have something there. You have it in place because let's say everybody was asleep that morning and nobody was worshiping. Nothing was happening. Everybody was just sitting here just like a bump on a log. And like, no matter how much you did a song, it was like they weren't moving. You eventually have to move on. Eventually, you can't just sit there until people start moving. You could be there I know some churches in Tennessee. You could be there for 2 hours, then it's still not gonna move. You know, but that's the reason why you have a plan. It's really to kind of be your safety net. So when something does happen, or if something does happen in the moment, like it was a big worship moment, you can just go to it. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully that answers your question with that. Yeah. Oh, you're good. You're fine. This is the time for it. Mm-hmm. 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 No, Mhm. Yep, I know exactly what you mean. That's a big thing we run into in the apostolic church because we don't want because I think a lot of mega churches it always seems like a big live music video performance. Everything's fake. It's not like God's act. The Holy Ghost is coming down. They're just like acting like it is. Yeah, you're right. Oh yeah. Hmm. What? Oh, as far as like if it feels like showy, showy. No, this is the way I think about it. I've been to quite a few mega churches over the years, like just like huge churches, seen like like churches big enough to where they have a music pass for each service. a full-time music pastor for each service, that size church, okay? Um, and the thing that I've noticed, a lot of these churches, a lot of them weren't apostolic, but the thing is that they do have something that I feel like we do lack in apostolic movement, and that's presentation. But the thing is, what they lack is truth. They lack truth. They lack, this spirit flowing and different things like that. And that's why they always want us. They want, oh, we want to have it like that church, that Pentecostal church, all that Pentecostal church. But because they know they have the presentation, and that's the thing that I would say when it comes to performance. Whatever you say, people think about a performance. That's the way I change my mindset to that. It's presentation. How are we presenting this versus like us showing off? It's like, oh, we're just showing off what we can do. But really, it's not showing off. You're actually giving your best. Because I think something with a lot of people, it can come off, because I used to be nervous about that too. It's like when people would be like, worship while you play. I'm like, am I faking? Or is it, but then I started to learn, like, well, as my spiritual walk grew, I'm like, oh man, yes, God, yes, I need this, but it doesn't become a performance anymore, but it may start off feeling like that because you're learning something. You're learning that. But when it becomes second nature to you, it's not. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And that's in my own church culture, that's what we do. Like when we learned that little one thing in life, when we did it the first time, it was like, everybody was thinking about it. Everybody's thinking about it. They're like, okay, oh, that moment's come up. Yeah. And they got it. They're like, okay, cool. Do the second time, thinking about it a little bit more. It's like, okay, cool. Third time, they're like, oh, okay, I think I got this. You know what I'm saying? And so it may start off feeling like that. And the thing is, the church, a lot of those little things like that, the only people who are going to notice, this sounds like I'm contradicting myself, are probably musicians and things like that. So I don't think I've never had that big of an issue where people just felt like, oh man, they're being so showy. But it's really kind of more so just giving your best and presenting it. And I think as us having truth, presentation is something that just makes everybody just so much better. Like it makes the apostolic movement just so much like received better, Now, and like we don't need the crazy production. Y'all probably heard people say, we don't need the crazy production. We don't need the lights. I literally, it was so funny. Yesterday, I saw this cane or this thing right here. And then I saw something over here, and I was like, what is that? And he told me, I was like, man, this is a Pentecostal church. Whatever. I saw that, and I was like, yeah, this is an apostolic church right here. but yeah, we don't need the lights. We can hang up our healings on the wall. But that's the thing, is that we're presenting this truth through what we do. We're doing it through excellence. And the thing is that sometimes people feel like excellence, can adulterate truth. But really, it's you look in the Bible, we're supposed to do things with excellence. We're supposed to, give God our best. We're supposed to grow the talents that He has given us. And so how do we do that? We challenge ourselves. Sometimes that challenge for this team is not going to be a challenge for the same team down the road. It's not going to be a challenge for my team in Nashville. But it's finding what that is. Some people fancy maybe just singing parts. You know what I'm saying? For some people, it may just be playing on time. And that's like, man, they're like fancy. Like that definition of fancy can be, a lot of different things. But anyways, any more questions? Anyways? Oh yeah.
it's a growing pain thing, especially with track, because track is still a different ball game. But as as Jesse grows and as Gio grows, and they just on the fly they can do bridge again if they need to or whatever. Like that whole growing process, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of work behind the scenes that they're doing too. Um, I just think it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be growing pain, just like you're saying, the slow process.
Well, a great way, I'll sum that up with this. How many of y'all are married? Okay, most of us here. Okay. When we were single, how much of a difference was it when you got married and you had to pay for two people's meals? Yeah? I remember for me, that was a big change. I was single for a little while, and I was like by myself for a little while. I was used to paying about $15 for a meal, $20. Got married, oh, that's $40 now. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. All right, so my people with kids, yeah, that changed to however many kids you have now. Yeah. Now I know for people who have like, you have four, three, right? You know, that changed to that, and as they got older, it's like, man, that's four more mouths to feed. Now when you go to eat anywhere, that's $100 at least. You know what I'm saying? It's the same way with change and growth. It starts off and it's very uncomfortable, but eventually you learn how to cope and you actually elevate yourself. I think when it comes to kids and things like that in marriage, that's always my thing, is because I feel like every layer, when you go from single, you have a certain kind of way about loving, people and others. It's different when you get married. Now you have somebody who's literally your right hand, your right hand, in everything you're doing. And then when you have kids, I haven't even experienced that yet, but there's a different, even I know from all of my friends, that's a different level of love that you're learning. And that's just growth in that. And so it's the same way with change and growth. It's going to start off and it's just going to be like that first workout. It's like, man, I can't even do a pull up, you know, and I can't even, curl this amount of weight. But after you do it a couple times, it gets a little easier. Then you have to up your weight. It gets a little easier. Then you have to up your weight. Then you start noticing, man, I'm looking good. Like, but that's growth, that's change, and that's as we go through everything today. Like he said, that I agree with that. It's going to feel you're going to feel some tension, and you're probably going to be like, that's really nitpicky. Yeah, but that's the way people think about it when you get to the higher level. Like I was telling them, I've seen drummers get fired for missing hits, on gigs and stuff. And I'm like, all right, that's important. you know, but that's the level of thinking that it goes to at these higher levels. And that's the reason why, like, even if Bo's got, we're actually the next part is, what time, do we have like lunch at a certain time or anything? Okay, cool. This is perfect. So this next part, does anybody have any more questions? Oh, okay, you're good. Did you have a question? Yeah, yeah. Yes. Do you not? Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Yes. Now, so I'll go ahead and tell you this. Bo can attest to this. Most every professional band, even like biggest churches I've ever been to, even if you don't hear a loop or track, they always have a click, and everybody has it in their ears. Because what it pretty much is that if you don't, I don't know if y'all know anything about recording music or anything. If you don't have that, you're not. If let's say you guys did a song at your church and you wanted to like eventually record it, or you wanted to post it or do something with it, you need to be on time so you can fix things. So if you're not on time, then you won't be able to ever be able to, well, I don't say ever, but it would be really hard to fix things, I would say. Would you say, Bo? But like it's just one of those things. That's that next level of thinking. Now it could be annoying, but what it's doing is just keeping everybody unified. And if you're unified, that means because I remember actually this is a great example. So y'all know who Brian Pounds is? So we were doing Brian Pounds recording last year, and his producer, um, we had this crazy worship moment. It was like crazy, but I think it was Donnie or somebody forgot to turn on the click, and so we were in this moment, and we was like, "Oh man, we can't put the click on right now." So literally, what he did, he guided us through the moment with the talkback mic, and then after did the recording, he had to go in and align everything on the click. Took forever, and that's the reason why it's like because then it gives you the ability to be able to grow to that point because that literally everybody that I play with, even if it's just me and one other person, there's always a click there. So, anyways, answer your question. Very important to have that in your ears, even if it's annoying. There's even ways you can even I could show Jesse and Gio this, but you can change the sound to maybe something a little bit more pleasing. You know, another sound that's not as annoying, because I know sometimes that could be just like really, really annoying. I understand that. Yeah, yeah. hmm So that varies for different situations. Now, at my own church, we have P16s, which are these little modules for all of our band members to adjust their own sound and stuff. But for my singers, they have an app on their phone, and so they have like we have actually the same soundboard y'all do, and so they have an app on their phone, and they're able to go through and they can adjust it while we're in rehearsal and things like that for their in ear mix. So how do y'all usually do it here? Oh, David does it. I don't even know. Bo knows. I think it's like getting it set up and everything. I don't know about all that, but yeah. To start with, yeah, 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 It- yeah. And everybody finds their way with that. So yeah, there's it's just depending on what sound system and you have and everything. Any other question? Yes. So a loop is like so when you hear a shaker or if it's just like a drum beat that's just repeated over and over, something like that. That's what we call a loop. And then when he was saying click track, which actually is funny because I feel like that's an older way of the older term for the click. um, it's a click. The click is that sound. That it's all only time you should ever hear that is in your headphones, not out here. But a loop you can hear out here. Okay, so that's a good way to think about it. Yeah. And then a track is when you have other instruments and you have to stick to a certain, thing where it's like other instruments playing. Because really the purpose of a track is so if because a lot of these tracks have like 5 layers of guitar, layers of keyboards and aux and all this kind of stuff that most churches don't have. So what it does is like it fills in those areas that you don't have. And that's the whole point of it. So it's like you're adding band members to your team without actually adding members to your team. And so that's kind of like that, the whole point of it. But yeah. Oh man. Nobody, nobody. Yeah, I mean that's growing pains. I was telling them. I remember I was teaching a guy at my church. Learning tracks it is a big undertaking. Um, but I remember I was teaching him how to set it up for our church, and I'm a big teacher in that way. I let people have boundaries, and it's the best way of teaching. And so I gave him all this time. He had the songs a month out. He had all the material, all the things. I said, "Hey man, call me if you need anything. Call my assistant if you need anything. If he needs whatever." And like he didn't call either of us. Day of the service comes, and the day service comes, and like he like the session is kind of barely there, and I'm like, "Oh gosh." And so we go through rehearsal, and I was like, "This is gonna be a wreck." And so I just let him go through it. I just let him go through it. Rehearsal was rough. really rough. And I was like, okay. And we went in after rehearsal. I tried to help him fix a couple things, but I was like, okay, this may not be savable. But I let it, like, it was a little bit, I like people to have a fall, because it helps you learn. But this was a little bit further of a fall than I would have liked to have. But that first service, we got to the second song. Everything was going okay. We got to the second song, and it just went. I don't know what. It was just like, and what was crazy is that he was sitting there in the audience because I was trying to teach him so he didn't like make the mistake again. Sitting there in the audience, and his head just went down like this. And I was like, and ever since then, he's never made a mistake on our tracks. And so that's the reason why having grace is good, but having those falls will happen. And I've even told Brian this, letting your pastor know, hey, we're working on this thing. So if you accidentally hear 1, 2, 3, 4 in the house, that we're learning, we're learning those things. Give us some grace. But yeah, no, that is a real thing. So the next part we're going to do is my friend Bo here. I don't know if y'all met Bo. Bo, raise your hand back there. This is Bo. He runs audio and live stream at my church. Bo's a very, very kind of quiet, very humble guy. He wouldn't tell you any of these things. But Bo he does audio for a living. He's been an audio engineer for how many years now? 17 years. Do y'all know anything about country music at all? Okay. Do y'all know who Morgan Wallen is? Luke Bryan, Lainey Wilson. Who else? Jason Aldean, Miranda Lambert. So all their venues, he pretty much is the manager of their production. Like all those like all their venues and stuff in Nashville, which is like some of the biggest venues or like most popular venues on Broadway, that big strip. And he's like the production manager. Yeah, and so he's trained all those engineers, like 25 engineers and different things that run all of that stuff. And so I say that to say, if you don't know Bo, there's a little bit about him. He wouldn't tell you that. But he's going to be kind of working with us, teaching us a little bit about some sound things. This is something that I'm glad I had him for. We do this at my church where we kind of learn some different things about sound. Because a lot of times we don't ever get any time with the sound guy to learn something. Most times it's just butting heads with them. Be like, hey, I'm not loud enough. And so with Bo, he's really good and personable, and I've learned a lot of good things from him. So what we're going to do this next little bit is just since they made some pretty big changes in the sound system. What do we want to do first? We're going to listen. So they just did some tweaks of the system the past day or two. And I don't know what it sounded like before in here, but I felt like it sounded really good. So we're going to let you hear, like, kind of, they had a virtual sound check of, like, basically where they recorded a service of you guys playing. They played, it's like a service. Brian, was it a recent service or something that y'all played? Okay. So it was a recording from there. And so you can kind of hear some of the things. And a lot of times you don't even get to hear this because you're always on the platform. So I'll let them y'all let me know when you're ready. I think they moved like that sub right there. That's something I noticed. Oh, and also if y'all have any questions throughout the day, feel free to just ask me. Like, it doesn't have to be a formal thing. Yes,
because when you go from playing that to live, he has to go through a little process, which is actually a good teaching point. It takes a minute, or it takes a little bit of time to get around on the console because you got to go from page. So sound engineers appreciate Grace in that regard as well. So we did a few changes on the system and the template. We tried not to change it too much. Those of you that use the iPads and stuff to mix your own mix, we've added a couple of channels. Like we now have a kick low channel. The reason for that is so we can process the low frequencies of the kick drum more specifically. We can run it through the system more healthily. So you'll just notice you have another channel there with the kick low in it. And we also made a bass low channel. So for the same reasons, just better processing and better bandwidth distribution, if you will. So I figured most of the meat and potatoes of what I'm going to be talking about today can be gone over as we go through the process. So for you vocalists, we used the virtual sound check to kind of get a ballpark on you, which that's not a representation of real life, but it's just enough to get a ballpark. So one of the most important things that you can do that we do in every facet of the production audio is get a line check, because the signal that you start with is the most important part of the whole thing. And so if Gio, for instance, doesn't play the organ at the same level that he's going to play during the actual service, everything after that is thrown off. Now we got to regain that channel. I got to turn it up, and it's going to now overload your ears, be louder than what you had set previously. Same thing with a vocal. So that's why he was talking about warming up is very important. At our church, they do a warm up every Sunday morning. They're in there doing their fossilati does and things. So they already get warmed up. And what we do is I get an initial gain check on vocalist and ask them to give me their all, so that we can get an accurate representation of what your vocal looks like, so we can set the parameters for that channel strip. Now, once we've done that, everything after that is a little bit smoother. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get a line check on the instruments, and we'll get an accurate representation from each instrument as to what their level will look like. And for calibration purposes, we like to get the highest level. So, I'll ask the band to give me their hottest level that I'm going to see from them, and we'll ask the same thing from the vocalist to get the hottest level from them. And I know on Sunday mornings, nobody wants to, at 8:30, 9 o'clock, or whatever time it is, you guys do your thing. Nobody wants to, I get that. I don't know how you do it. That's why I'm on that side of the console. But as close as you can get. And in our church, once I got those initial calibrations, we save them into a library. We've started to do that process here. So everybody will have their own channel strip. There'll be a Tristan channel strip that David will recall on Sunday morning, and bam, put Tristan here. And so once we've established those libraries, and it won't be something that will happen this weekend totally, probably. It'll be an ongoing process that David will have to work through, and he'll appreciate your patience with that. But over time, those things will get more and more dialed in. And he'll be able to recall your channel strip on the library. And so most of the time at the turning point, I don't have to have them do their vocal line check every Sunday. And they all appreciate that, because they did it for me really good one time, and they can kind of work into it on the first song. I understand that even if you try your hardest, it's just not there. So we're going to begin by doing our line check. Ears, those of you that will be using in-ears. So for vocalists particularly, the way I like to calibrate, the way all this works, how you start is kind of everything after that kind of falls into place. You'll notice probably some cleanliness in your ears and some it should sound a little better than it has previously. So things that bothered you before may not bother you now after some of the things we've gone through and tightened up and gotten some of the ambient noise out and some things of that nature. So things that have annoyed you in the past, I asked you to be open-minded today. As far as I didn't want any of that before, I have gone through and kind of re-ballparked your mixes. Sorry about that, but it's important to start fresh, especially after we've gone through and we've alleviated a lot of those things that we think may have been an annoyance in your ears. And like Travis was saying, it's important to hear everything. So if the click may not bother you as much now as it bothered you before, because everything else is kind of in its place. And it's important that we all hear each other. And from our perspective, quality of life in your mix, your ears, is very important. It's a big, important part of everything we're doing. So I didn't come here just to make the front of house sound good. Came here to help you have a better quality of life in your listening environment. That's, because that helps you do your thing. So what I will say is when it comes to calibration on your ears, for you vocalists, what we're going to do is we calibrate your pack, your volume on your pack, which I know David kind of gave you the noon or the at least halfway rule. It's going to be similar to that. But basically, you'll calibrate the master volume of your pack to your voice. And then everything else will fill out underneath that. This is kind of a tried and true way, because if we start with that attenuator on your pack too low, we push too much into it, you get distortion, you get weirdness. If you do it too high, that's also weird. So getting a good starting point is paramount. So in order to get that starting point, we have to have what's the most important thing? The gain stage, your voice, how it sounds when you're giving it your all. And yeah, that sums up the preliminary of what I wanted to go through. So, all right. So I guess we want to start with getting. Let's get. We'll get the band setting up, and then we'll just get everybody setting up, and then we'll do a line check, and we'll start there.